my father was a lot of fun and not the most responsible person. He was kind of an eternal teenager, in fact, but he had showed his aspirations. His great dream was to be an opera singer, and he had a nice, powerful baritone voice. But for whatever the reasons, it was not going to happen. But he always did summer stock and kind of the community theater version of opera. He would sing baritone roles with the Westchester Opera Guild, and that was sort of the first theater that I was exposed to, in a certain sense, was the opera, and the music isn't what got me. It was the extraordinary artifice, the enchantment of this artificial world, and particularly in these kind of amateurish opera companies where everything was painted on the backdrop, including the chorus. And I really do believe that my aesthetic was formed at this earliest age from this kind of cheap theatrics that I saw that was so magical, and even the idea that the beautiful soprano playing Violetta in La Traviata, when I would go backstage afterwards, she was this rather dowdy school teacher, and that could have been devastatingly disappointing to some children, but for me, that actually clarified the magic of transformation. So, but I applied to all these colleges, theater departments, NYU and Boston University and Purchase. It was the first year that Purchase opened, state school, and I had all these auditions, and I didn't get accepted anywhere I had to audition. I thought I had nice pieces, but I was accepted nowhere. I was accepted at some Drake University in Iowa, and a couple places like that, where I guess they didn't really care. And the fact was, I was never going to get a scholarship, so we were paying full price. That made you a little more attractive to a couple schools. But then at summer stock, a lot of the kids were applying to Northwestern. So even though it did seem like a little ridiculous that such a good school would ever take me, but you didn't have to audition for the theater department. Your grades had to be good, and your SAT scores and all that. But I applied anyway. What the hell? And then, of course, I was supposed to fly to Chicago for the interview, and the phone rang, and it was the what do you call it, department, the admissions department, saying that we never received his last SAT scores. We're canceling the application. And my aunt went full mode and said, "Listen, I tell you, you're going to like this kid, and if I could just put him on a plane right this minute." And they said, "Oh, it's really pointless. We have the application open, so we'll just look at it right now." And I got in early admission. And the only thing I can think of, the only thing I can imagine is I must have written a very good essay. And I also wonder whether, looking at the paper, oh well, he not only is interested in acting, but he's interested in playwriting, and he draws well, and that sounded like an interesting person. That's the only thing I can think of, because my grades really were not up to snuff. Where do I fit in? And it did seem to me that if I'm not being cast in university theater, I'm gonna have a hard time with it in the real world. It's kind of a microcosm. Fortunately, living in New York City, I would come home for vacation, and I began to be exposed to experimental theater and Off-Broadway, which I hadn't seen that much of with Anne Boleyn. But it was the 70s were a real golden age of experimental theater, the work of Richard Foreman and the Performance Group, and all these different things. And then Charles Ludlam was the big turning point. Because I'd read about him in one of my aunt's Vogue magazines. People are talking about it. And I tried to go see him, but the play had closed already. And then I somehow saw an ad that he was doing a play called Eunuchs of the Forbidden City, and it was at Westbeth. So I took my sister, and we went down there, and I had never seen anything like it. And I just couldn't believe, I think, first of all, the set was, there was all these sort of drapes, curtains, within curtains that move around, and this grotesque, it was kind of fantasia or Orientalism. And Charles played the chief eunuch to the Empress Liliane, I should say Lillian, and Black-Eyed Susan was the empress, the courtesan who becomes the empress of China. And it was filthy. Oh, it was so dirty and hysterically funny. And I just couldn't believe I'd never seen anything like this. And the fact that here's this man, Charles Ludlam, who's wrote it and directed it and produced it and is acting in it and creating roles for himself and I share all of his interests in grand opera and 19th century melodrama and Hollywood film, and then some of the characters are in drag, and I was so aware of my own androgynous nature, and the fact that I, with my college roommate, who was turned into my best friend at the time, Ed, I would entertain him with. I always had this ear for impersonation, and that I could do Betty Davis and Garbo and all these people and entertain Ed, and create sort of echt movie dialogue for his entertainment. But there's Charles Ludlam doing that on stage in this marvelous way that has almost a classical feel to it. And it was just an extraordinary revelation. And with Ludlam and all the other artists that I saw, Jeff Weiss was a big impression on me, was the idea that you didn't have to wait to be cast, that you could create your own theatrical world. I mean, how extraordinary was that revelation? Yeah, and that changed everything from that moment. In the dressing room, I said, as though I have a kind of dream that I would love to have my own theater company on the lines of the Ridiculous Theatrical Company, that I would write plays for, and that I would, they'd be, genre parody plays, and that I would play the lead. And they, all these boys and girls all said, we'd love to be a part of that.
Yeah, this is Chicago.
In Chicago. And so we called it the Imitation of Life Theatrical Company or something like that. And we were trying to raise. I wrote this vampire play, but it required some kind of budget, and we didn't have any money. So then I wrote another little piece called Myrtle Pope, a story of a woman possessed. It was based on Madam X, with little bits of a million different movies. It was a wonderful vehicle for me. And we were able to put that on with no money at all, really. And we booked it at all these different little places, at gay bars, straight bars, the movie theater. There was a movie theater. Convinced them after the last screening to let us get on stage and do the play, and it was fascinating because once again, I don't want to come off too arrogant or something, but just in my embryonic rough stage, I felt from the start this wonderful relationship with the audience. I liked them and they liked me. Just from the beginning, and in my roughest edge, and playing the female lead in the play, and they just all liked me and got it, and I just was so bowled over by the whole decadent ambiance. I immediately, show was over, I found the young man who owned the club, who called himself Michael Limbo, and he was this artist, and he was a good-looking young guy, and I would say he had shaved his head halfway back, and the rest was dyed bright red. And he sort of looked like Daniel Day-Lewis as Elizabeth I. And I said, oh, I just love this place so much, and I would love to do a show here. And he looked at the calendar, and so I've got Friday and Saturday night in a month. You want it? So I'll take it. I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to do my act, which was so, severe, and dressed in a black shirt, black pants. I wanted to do something decadent. I thought I'll write myself a little play, and I guess I had to maybe just read Interview with the Vampire. I had vampires on mine, so I wrote a little vampire skit. It was 2 little scenes, or be a half hour long, and I called it Vampire Lesbians of Sodom. Actually, a friend of mine was over, my friend Ed from college. I said, well, I got to call it something. It doesn't matter. It's not like a real play. What do I call it? And Ed was in advertising at that point. He said, oh, why don't you call it Vampire Lesbians of Sodom? Well, that'll do.
What was Ed's last name?
Ed Tasic.
Okay.
So, yeah, a big, important figure in my life. So then my roommate was a fellow, Ken Elliott. And Ken I knew from college, and Ken was a very elegant, dignified fellow from a very fine family in Indianapolis. And he wanted to be a director and was just finding really no success, and had been working as a stage manager regionally. And finally he decided that this was just, not going anywhere for him, that he applied to, highly intelligent fellow, and he applied to law school at Columbia and got accepted. And his parents were thrilled. So I, the evil genius, say to him, well, look, just direct this little skit for me, and what a jazzy way to say farewell to the theater. So we put together this cast, and just people that I knew, Andy from summer camp, and Teresa, who I knew from the theater in Washington, D.C.
Teresa's last name?
Well, Teresa Seves, but I renamed her Teresa Marlowe, which I thought had a little more, pizzazz to it. And then, and then there's this beautiful, beautiful boy, Bobby Carey, who Ken was dating, who was working as like at the concierge desk, I think, at Helmsley Palace, and he was just the most beautiful boy in the world, and his gorgeous body, but he had a voice kind of like Harvey Firestein, and he was not an actor, had no desire to be an actor, never, can't talk like this, smoking, and so Ken said, let's put Bobby in the play. I was like, oh yeah, fine. He'll be, we'll just take his clothes off and put him in a G-string, he'll be the guard, And then there was a young kid who was right out of NYU, Arnie Klodner, who was an aspiring actor, but did a magic act at the Renaissance Fair. So we cast him as the other sort of boy in it, and the other G-string. And then I asked Bina to play opposite me. I was going to be the young virgin who then becomes a vampire, and then the leading lady opposite me is the succubus. So I asked Bina to do it. Then her mother in Pakistan became ill, so she had to leave and go to Pakistan. She hasn't forgotten to this day. So I asked Lola Pashlinsky, who was much older than we were and had been one of the great stars of Charles Ludlam's company. And so she had always been nice to me. So I asked her if she would play the succubus. It basically is, we're going to rehearse it 3 times and do it for 2 nights. That's it. So she said okay, and we rehearsed a little bit. And we had fun, and everybody just hit it off. They all knew me but didn't know each other, and we just all hit it off, and it was fun. And we spent literally $36, which was only for postage. I was working office temp, so I Xeroxed all the scripts. When they weren't looking, drew a little poster, a little flyer, Xerox out, they're not looking, and there was no set because there was no stage, and the costumes I just kind of put together from just everybody has like their drag box, So I just figured if the silhouette is right, then that's all you kind of need. So we put it together. And Kathy Carr, who was my dear friend, who had been stage manager for me the one time I got a chance in New York to do my solo show at a little Off-Broadway theater. And we stayed friends, and so she was stage manager for this little piece, whatever the stage manager would do in this art gallery. But when I put on my wig, I just had this ratty old wig I throw on my head, and Kathy said, "Oh, honey, you can't go on looking like that. Let me just comb it out at least." Okay. But Kathy was a bit older than we were, so she was like a kind of a tough Brooklyn girl who had been doing office work since the mid-'60s. So in the 60s, she was really good with the teasing comb, but she would do all the big bouffants. So she started teasing the wig and put it on. So we had a lot of fun that weekend. And then we decided we're going to do one more weekend. That was cool. It's like insane, you know. Anyway, so so we did Theodora, and then we kept changing. We were just having so much fun, and I kept writing another new little piece for us. Each one was about 45 minutes, and it was a little ensemble, and it was so interesting because it was the exact same situation I had in Chicago with the wrong group of people who thought that I was, you know, in their way, and here's this little group of people who all thought I had so much to offer, and that I was creating roles for them. I mean, that doesn't happen too often. A playwright creating a role for you, tailored exactly for you to show off your strengths, shy away from your weak points, at the same time stretch you for each play, give you something a little bit more to do than you did before. You know, I mean, that's a nice person to have in your life, you know, and give you kind of a fantasy. Each one's in a bit of, in a sense, often a fantasy of who I kind of knew how they saw themselves, and allow. I know, like in Sleeping Beauty or Coma was a parody of Maud London, and that just came about because Julie and I, one of the things we bonded on was as teenagers, we both were obsessed with London in the 60s and the Beatles and Gene Shrimpton, the model, and Julie Christie and Terence Stamp and Hard Day's Night, and you know, that whole Maud London thing we were just obsessed with. So this was my chance to allow Julie to be on stage, you know, a London Dolly Bird. She played, you know, a young fashion model becomes the, you know, great symbol of London in the 60s. You know, it's a wonderful thing. It was, you know, kind of a gift that I could give Julie. And I used to do a curtain speech all the time where I would try to get people to sign our mailing list. And I would just invent the titles of shows that I didn't intend to do, just to be funny. And one night, just as a joke, I said, "Oh, and we're going to do Gidget Goes Psychotic." Big laugh. So I kept that as a punchline for a couple of years. Finally, Ken said to me, "You know, we've been publicizing this show. If we ever did it, you know, people might really want to go see it." He said, "But, you know, if we do it, you know, we have to have every cliche of the beach party movies, and you have to go psychotic in a big way." I thought, oh God, you know, I don't like those movies and Gidget. And I might, you know, Grand Dame and in my 19th century theater, or great movie actresses at the Pantheon. But I thought, well, maybe if Gidget has split personality, I could be, you know, the cute little, you know, sort of Sally Field character, but then she turns into this sort of dominatrix vixen, Anne Bowman. And then I could play, and it was a little bit almost like my old solo show. She also had split personality. She became, you know, she was a black checkout girl at the supermarket. She was a male model. She was a kind of a Dr. Ruth character. All these things, and so we put it together. When we went back to Limbo Lounge, you know, we do our show at the Provincetown Playhouse, you know, still in our wig caps, all get into cabs, race over to Limbo Lounge. The audience was already seated in there, and we'd be walking down the aisle, you know, and then we'd get ready, and then we'd do the show. They flipped over that one. So then Ken decided to move that off-Broadway too. Now I came along at the almost the tail end of commercial off-Broadway. And I'm so lucky, because that career would not have happened today. The fact is, you know, nonprofit theaters will sometimes transfer something to Broadway, but it's very rare that anybody almost never transfers a nonprofit run to an off-Broadway theater. I wanted to do another play at WPA, and I just had some vague idea, and it was Kyle, you know, he trusted me, and so I think I said to him, I said, "Oh, well, the idea is that I'm a movie actress during the McCarthy era, during the Blacklist, and I'm making a movie about Lady Godiva. I get cocked over the head, and then I dream I'm Lady Godiva, and that's most of the play. So he says, okay, fine. So we booked the thing. So I'm writing it, and I always work very closely with my directors as dramaturg, and Ken was marvelous, wonderful dramaturg with me. But it was clear that he was not really very interested in Lady Godiva, but he had thought the frame, just the little framework, was what interested him, set in the Hollywood in the Blacklist. So he kept kind of, without me really knowing, sort of moving me in this direction of, sort of making Lady Godiva shorter and more. What if there was a scene with the houseboy? What if there was the thing and their husband? Blah, 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 blah. Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah. So anyway, it turned out to be a play about the Blacklist with a very short little 5-minute dream sequence of Lady Godiva, and Ken was very, very correct. I worked on this play called "You Should Be So Lucky," and I thought I'd write myself a male role for the first time. I thought that would be interesting for me to do. Try it. And it was a contemporary New York comedy, and we did readings of it at a bunch of different theaters, and it wasn't much any real interest. And then Bay Street Theater in Sag Harbor had a play reading series, and we were doing it there, and I had a terrible attitude all the way there. I thought, well, this is just a exercise in foolishness, and schlepping all the way to Sag Harbor for hours to do another reading that nobody's going to care for. And it just so happened that this gentleman named Casey Childs, who had a wonderful theater in New York called Primary Stages, happened to be out in the Hamptons, and he came to this reading, and he liked it, and he wanted to do the play lesson somewhere there, I guess, isn't it? But you just never know. So that started my relationship with Primary Stages. And when you were on, which street was it?
45th Street.
45th Street. And so it was a very difficult play for me because I was trying to write this male role, and what the play started out as and what it ended up having to be changed and my role changed. And I really am a woman's playwright. I love actresses, and I was raised in a sort of matriarchal family, so it did seem like the women's roles were the flamboyant roles that Julie Halston played, and Nell Campbell from the Rocky Horror Show was so marvelous. We were looking for a Nell Campbell type, so we thought, well, let's just get Nell Campbell to do it. She was wonderful. The great actor Stephen Perlman, Matthew Arkin. Yes, Arkin. But it was a little frustrating for me just because I really liked playing the male character very well. I think the girls did have better parts. And around that time, I saw that wonderful revival of A Delicate Balance, the Albee play with Elaine Stritch and George Gazar and Rosemary Harris. And it was a fascinating play. And I thought, wouldn't it be interesting to take these, very contemporary New York Jewish Upper West Side characters and place them in the middle of a kind of cryptic Albee Pinter play, old times, or Delicate Balance. Not a parody of those plays, but just that kind of play. What would it be like? And that inspired the Tale of the Allergist's Wife. Around that time, while I was working on it, I saw Linda Lavin in an evening of one acts called Death Defying Acts, and she was so marvelous in that. In one piece in particular, she was that kind of lady, and so I kept her in my head. I thought, that's who kind of should play it. And I finished the play, and I sent it to Lynn Meadow, and she right away said, "Oh, let's do a reading right away. And who's your fantasy actress to play Marjorie?" Because the character was now called Marjorie Taub. And so Linda Lavin. So let's try to get Linda Lavin. Linda agreed to do this reading, and she kind of hijacked the reading and knew that we wanted her, so she cast the rest of the reading, including. Now I wasn't really speaking to Julie, but somehow she had become friends with Linda. Linda had cast her in the supporting role. The girl that I'm really not speaking to anymore. okay. And then, just everybody was kind of miscast and too young and whatever. But it was the most extraordinary reading. Linda and I know she was reading cold. It just, somehow, she just did it was the entire performance. And it was at a table, kind of like this. The actors, there was one section where the other characters are talking and the characters just all did her. She just got out of her seat. What you doing? And she went over to the window and she was just in character, just responding to what was going on, And then she somehow just knew when to come back and get right back into the script. It was extraordinary. And we, when it was over, then Meadow and I were like, so you'll do it? I don't know. I'd like to do Sweet Bird of You. Oh, yeah. And she dragged this out for 9 months.
Linda Lavin.
Because Linda wanted to do the play, and she wouldn't commit. And we did some readings with other actresses, and it just, we found among those readings we found Tony Roberts, who later did the part, but it just wasn't quite right. It had to be Linda, and I just went back in a way to the kind of drive I hadn't had in a number of years. I stalked her, and I wrote letters to her comparing her to Duza and Bernhardt. I was shameless. She was doing collected stories in L.A., and I went to L.A. to see the play, and I would just pop up at Joe Allen's. She happened to be there, and finally she gave in, and so we did the play at stage 2 at MTC. Got Michelle Lee, and found this extraordinary old lady, Cheryl Bernheim, who had a very undistinguished career and had to wait till she was 80 years old to get a decent part, who just was the character. And Santa Laquasto did the set, and Ann Roth did the costumes. It was fascinating to work with Ann Roth. I'd never worked with a costume designer who came quite from such a psychological point of view, with how really coming from behavior that predicates what the character will wear. Extraordinary woman. Yeah, and we got these rave reviews from Brantley and everybody, and it was a little frustrating that the narrative that season for me, everybody's got their narrative, was that this East Village bar drag queen, had written a Broadway mainstream comedy 3 years before we had done You Should Be So Lucky, which was very much in that genre, and had gotten very nice reviews and transferred. Yeah. But that, and all of my plays for the previous 10 years or so had all started at, WPA Theater, played the Lord Tell Theater. I kept saying it's not like I've just been, my audience is just pinheads and carny folk. I've been legit for a long time now, but that's the narrative that you serve, and I had to, it was having a Broadway hit. It was opened at transferred to the Barrymore Theater. I really just I didn't think I was ever going to be on Broadway. It was just amazing. The day that the marquee went up at the Barrymore, it was pouring rain, and I stood outside there. I looked at the marquee from the left side, the right side, to the center. I just couldn't believe that there's my play. And then the first preview, we were sold out in previews. It was a hit from start. And Sondheim was a big help too. Stephen Sondheim Frank Rich had done a big cover story in the New York Times magazine section. It was Sondheim at 75 or something, one of his birthdays, and he had seen it at the play at MTC, and he wrote, the funniest play I think I've ever seen is The Tale of the Auditor's Wife. So that kind of gave it that was helpful. Yeah, everything helps. Yeah.
Olive and the Bitter Herbs.
Well, that was my return to primary stages.
Yes.
Well, that was an interesting play. I love that play. I tell you, that's a maligned play, because it started out that the old actress who was in Alger's Wife, Cheryl Bernheim, was an eccentric woman, and when she died at her memorial service, which was held just in a rehearsal room at Manhattan Theater Club, people were, her nieces were telling stories, but about Aunt Cheryl, but it didn't seem like the eccentric woman I ever met. And then this actress spoke at the end. The niece said, "Does anyone else would like to share?" And this other old character actress who'd been Cheryl's understudy in the play On the Road said, "I'll speak." And she said, "Every night on the road, I go into Cheryl's dressing room and I'd say, 'Hello, how are you?' And Cheryl would say, 'What, are you hoping I'll break my hip?'" And then the last thing Cheryl did when she played the Holocaust survivor on Law and Order. She was so brilliant. I immediately called Cheryl up. I said, "Cheryl, it's Sandra. You were extraordinary." And Cheryl said, "Why are you calling me? I wouldn't have called you." And I said, "Cheryl, you're toxic. I'll never speak to you again." And that's the last time I saw her. Thank you. I couldn't believe it. So that got me this idea for a play. And I thought about an old New York character actress who's just so, so bitter. And so that was the idea. And it was a very difficult character for many people because she just is really kind of unrelieved, nasty. But you have to sort of feel for her.
Where do you see the whole Off-Broadway movement going? What's your take on it now?
Well, I do think it's the nonprofit world. It does seem that it's just rare, as we said, that there is commercial Off-Broadway. I mean, I guess there are occasionally at the New World stages. They generally tend to be kids' theme shows. It just doesn't happen very often. Or Broadway shows that do a scaled-down version there. But so I remember years ago when I loved the Lortel Theater, and I remember Lucille Lortel Theater in Christopher Street. I remember going there as a child, seeing things when it was called the Theater de Lise. And when Miss Lortel died and willed her theater to be used for nonprofit theaters to do a season, and I remember at the time just thinking, "Oh wow, another commercial theater that's lost to us." But how wise she was, because that theater would have been empty most of the time and probably torn down. Instead, it's always used for different nonprofit theaters coming into their season. It's alive and thriving. She was very wise to do that, because I guess economics are that to produce a play off Broadway is not that different from producing it on Broadway. It's the same amount of publicity, same things. So yeah,
it's almost the same amount of work.
Yeah, it's very, very, very hard, and So I think it's really Off-Broadway is a nonprofit theater, and certainly seems to be blooming and blossoming. And I'm kind of a Pollyanna type. I always like to see on the plus side. I don't like thinking doom and gloom. I think things are alive. There's always new. People always try and get me to come off like a bitter old thing. East Village doesn't exist anymore. There's real estate there. Your career never happened today, and there are no young people will have no chances today. I said, no. I said, there's always going to be a young person who's got a dream and a lot of ambition, and some talented friends. It'll always be.
Who will figure it out.
And they'll figure it out. They'll do it in Brooklyn. They'll do it in Astoria. They'll find some way. If you're talented, you will find, and you are just, got that, and you're a bit of a monster. You will find it. There'll be blood on the ground, as you betray people, But that's the theater, and a career.